Hello, fellow idiots. This is Nick, the idiot, here in the kitchen again with my dirty tactical baby gear. This is hot sauce that didn't get on her, but it did get on it. So just in case you're like, I'm putting her in danger, and it wasn't that hot anyway. She's got to learn sometime. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. A friend of mine, Sabrina, Etienne. She even doesn't know how to pronounce her last name. She said, just two different ways. So Sabrina Etienne, I can't get past it. Anyway, Sabrina had said, you mentioned tithing at one point. You should talk a little about that. And I'm just going to say a couple of quick things about that. First of all, you can talk about a lot of church subjects and people are fine with it. But then you go near like their wallet and people are like, whoa, okay, easy, pump your brakes, kid. I remember my grandpa Davidson once saying, because they were Catholic way long ago, and when it was in Latin, and he was like, yeah, we were going every Sunday, and then they switched it, to English, and turns out they just want your money, so we quit going. And I was like, is that really how it happened? I think that, revisionist history is a real thing. But anyway, sometimes that is the perception to people. It's like, they're just always asking for money. And I know priests are, hey, does this work? Does this help if I do that? Does that help? Except for there's that window right there. Let's see. Hold on. I was criticized by Sabrina Etienne. There. How's that? Deal with that, girl. Anyway, that is one area that even priests are like, man, I want to pastor my flock. I want to teach them about finances and how to and generosity and giving, but I'm scared to do it. People get mad. You always hear about time, treasure, talent, and when I speak about time, talent, and I save the worst for last. I talk about treasure last. And because actually, when it really comes down to the nitty gritty, if we're being honest, that ends up being one of the most practical, pragmatic ways to pry your fingers off this world and to just be generous. And so I close with that because it's the one area that kind of sucker punches me and everybody else. My thing is, so when I was little, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. There were times I do remember people dropping groceries off at our house because they knew we were short on money. And I, all through my childhood, even if that were true, even if we didn't have a lot, my mom always made it really clear, but you always give, you always tithe. So much so that she's, Nick, your first paycheck, when you get that first paycheck, you're going to give. You give. And I remember getting my first paycheck. I worked for Finger Hut Telemarketing in Duluth. And I got my first paycheck, and I was nearly terrified. I ran. I ran to the bank and got it cash, and I, as quickly as possible, gave it to the church. I did as much as I could as quickly as possible because I'm like, she's going to know. My mom's going to know, and I got to take care of this. And so when it comes to that, that was always just ingrained in me that we'd be at church and the offering plate would come by and my mom would make sure that I saw, this is what you do. And it wasn't even, my mom, I wasn't scared. My mom didn't we don't have any food. You know that? But God still needs his money. Because that's the problem we have. We have this mentality when we even mention tithing, God's up there be I'm giving you this stuff, but I really want some of it back. You better just not. That's not at all. That's 100% not the issue. It has nothing to do with God being tapping his foot and be could have done better, could have given more. It's not at all, ever. God gives 100% freely, and he gives and gives and gives, and it's outward. And the rain falls on the just and the unjust, which is a good thing in that analogy. The sun shines on us all, and it is good. So it's not about God. It's about how do I act like that then? How do I act like God? How can I fulfill, if I'm in his image and likeness, how can I be like that? How can I live that sort of life? And one of the ways that really, 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 every time you get something that can really speak home is the tithe. And for me, I got to college, and you don't make a lot of money in college, and I was going to school in Minneapolis, and I worked at this little Kenny's Market, this little ghetto grocery store, and which was awesome. I loved it. Actually, one point, because the prices were high in the ghetto, and I remember this woman with her kid. She's like, "Why you guys got to charge so much for the money?" I'm like, I don't make any plans at all. They don't ask me what we should charge for the bologna. But I told her, listen, here's my number. I have a car, and you let me know if you don't want to buy from here. Someday when I'm not working, just call me and I'll take you to Cub Foods, and we can go get some cheaper. And she's like, thank you very much. And she left. And And then like it was like maybe an hour later, I was still working, and this guy comes in. He's like, comes up to the counter in front of everybody, and was like, "All right, I want to know who gave their number to my wife." And I was like, "Oh, this is odd. So this is how I die. I never knew." I was like, it's me." And he says, "You gave your number to my wife? You told her you pick her up with your car?" I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "I just want to say thank you, man." And he shook my hand, and he's like, "I have friends in every gang. If you ever need anything done," for real. And I was like, "Oh," so like I got A's the rest of my college because I just, rough them up a little bit at North Central. Anyway, I always knew, even then when I was in college working at Kenny's, you get your paycheck, you run to the Chapel of Hope right there. The Chapel of Hope, you give it away. You give your 10% away. At minimum, you give your 10% away. And because everything, and this is the concept, is that everything comes from him anyway. I worked hard. Yeah, but how did you get that job? Well, I went and applied. How did you have the ability to get the job, to breathe, to walk, to function, to do your job? It's all gift. And actually at the very base, at the beginning, everything is gift. Everything was given to you. All good things come down from the Father of lights. And that's an underlying principle of life. You're breathing right now because there is breath in your lungs that is given to you. That would be the Christian stance. Everything comes from him. And so then what happens is you say, okay, well, but how can I then how can I live in such a way that I acknowledge that I'm living a gift right now, that I'm just given this? How do I do that? And there's any number of ways. You have time, talent, and treasure. And there was this prolife gala here in International Falls the other night on Saturday night. And there was like 200 people there, and it was the Northern Options for Women in town. There's this amazing place, the ultrasound machine. They have classes on parenting, just like if you're gonna keep your kid, let us help you. And which is the big criticism I know all the time, like, oh, you care about abortion, but you don't care about all the rest of life. Yes, we do. Please don't buy into that. The criticisms are just criticizing. Actually, just in some ways, when I criticize, it shows my ignorance because I haven't taken time to actually know the truth about the matter. So anyway, I was at this gala, and I was the MC, and so then at the end, there's this list of like 30 names, and I don't know all the names, and so I was like, man, it's a lot of names to mispronounce and massacre. So I asked the executive director, Vicky, hey, they've all been named earlier in the night. Do you want me to say these again? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. And it was because why? These are all the people that made it happen. So of course we're going to acknowledge them officially, like at the end of the night. And it was beautiful. So for us, for all of you, when you receive something, it's just good to acknowledge where it came from, and that it all comes from God. All good things come down from the Father of lights, and so whatever parish you go to, it can be easy to be like, you know what, I have bills, I'm strapped. I understand that. Jason and I have lived off of Providence for so many years. We were at zero all the time. It would just be moment by moment and relying on God to give through people. And there were times that miraculously, money would show up in our bank. When we did the adoption, people from around the world were giving money. I don't even know them. We never met them, but they heard about it. And how can we get money in your Wells Fargo account? And then they did. Like a complete gift, trusting this idiot. So with that in mind, then, how can you in your life give? Well, you go to a parish, and it can, I know, on Sunday it can be tempting to be like, oh, I don't know. I don't even know what they're going to do with it. Well, first of all, people criticize the church all the time. Oh, they're wanting money, but what are they going to do with it? Just do this. Go to your parish, go into the office, and not in an aggressive way, in a jerky way, but in a humble way, go in and be like, hey, I want to give. Like, what does our church do with the money that gets tithed? Like, where does it output? And some of it will be the electric bill in northern Minnesota. I'm guessing 95% of it is the heating bill or something. But it's going to go to practicals because the church that you go to has an electric bill and a heating bill and a water bill and maintenance and things break. Most of your priests don't get paid diddly squat, if anything, but they do have a place to live that takes, they have a roof over their head. That usually needs to be heated, electric, all that stuff. Usually food. If they don't make an income, then some sort of food stipend is there. So that's going to be, but then you're going to find out invariably that your church has some policy of giving to the poor. When I worked at St. Ben's in Duluth, people would come in and be like, you could just see they were, I don't even want to do this. They'd come in need, and the pastor and then the people in the front desk, they had gift cards they'd hand out. They had certificates and coupons and blankets, and they just had stuff in stock to give and people knew you could go to St. Ben's and you could receive. At one point, there was a woman, she'd been sleeping in her car. It was the middle of winter, like a real cold spell, which is basically all year round, but it was one of the cold spells, cold spell. And they were letting her, she slept on the couch in the entranceway in front of the fireplace. They were letting her sleep there because it was so cold out. Like, and I would guarantee your church has policies like that where they're like, no, this is what we do with our income. Any extra, this is what happens with it. And it can be so easy to criticize anybody, but to criticize what the church, I mean, you'll hear people say about the Vatican, oh, they got all these priceless works of art, these Michelangelos in there, and just keeping them from the public, making money off of it, which is BS. I don't even, there's a totally different video, how the ignorant things that get said about the church. Anyway, the Vatican, you go, you pay a few dollars, and you get to see priceless works of art. And they're open to the public because because they're protected and safe. If someone private owned them, you have no control if you get to see them or not, if the world gets to see them. They put them on display. You're walking for the few dollars you pay to walk through the Vatican. You're seeing like a history of art and beauty and creativity. It's insane. So anyway, all that to say, it's easy to criticize, but go to your own church. And if that is your issue, go to them and ask. If it's not, please, consider tithing for the rest of your life. Regardless of what you have. Mostly, like even in college, if I was honest, it came down to, well, but I wanted Mountain Dew with this. Mountain Dew used to be a big thing in my life. It was my best friend. And maybe that's what it is for you if you're honest. Like, well, I'm going to have to skip this one thing I really like a lot. I'm going to have to skip it once. And that may be. Then good. Skip something. And especially, but what you'll probably find is you didn't even need to skip anything in giving your 10%. I say try it for a month and see if you live. And then if you're alive, try it again the next month. And if... yeah, in a minute. You watch the trains and then I'll be done in a minute. Okay? Okay. So there's that for yourself. But the reason the video got sparked is because we make our kids tithe. And that's what I had mentioned in the video was... one of my kids does not like tithing at all, and we always tithe. They always see we put our check in, they see it, but anytime they get anything, any money that comes in gets tithed on, and that's because that's what we do. I hear people say like before taxes, do you tithe? I tax on whatever comes into I tithe on whatever comes into my bank account. So I don't know what happens before my wife. I don't even have an income anymore. I stay in this room. But when Jacelyn's check comes in, I look at that number that went into the bank account and I tithe on that. And at the end of the year, it's tax season's coming up. If we get any sort of refund, we tithe on that because that came to us. If some random people give money, we tithe on that. If they give to our nonprofit, we tithe on that. Anything that you get, you give. So you find a way to do it. So my kids, they'll get a Christmas present or a birthday present, and they'll be, yeah, I got $100. Awesome. You got $90. You got $100. That was given to you. But what you're going to learn to do is that and you'll see them on Sunday, like beforehand, when we take care of, like I'm looking here, this is where we take care of the money. We take care of it. You got $25. I'm going to take $250 out, and here's your change. They're like, But when Sunday comes, they're eager. They truly are. They've reminded me before, hey, we're going to Mass. Do you have my money? Do you have the money that we're going to tithe? They remember it. And that's super important because then they even realize, like, well, but even gifts, like, well, this is a Christmas present. That's different. I didn't work. No. Anything you receive, then find a way to give because the God who only gives, you want to live like that. You want to live with that. And you'll see them every time that you tithe or that they tithe, the basket comes by and you have to physically, you don't see what my hand's doing. You have to physically just let go. You have to, like, not even just emotionally, you have to let go of the money and it drops in there and you can't be like, I want it back and just grab a handful. You can't do that. So you've given. It's just gone then. And it's beautiful because you don't ever hear them being like, I'm so Mass gets over and like, stupid, this got like $2.50 over, stupid. Like, they don't do that because their heart has grown, because their soul is stronger, because they're closer to God, because they're more like God in that moment. And so it's really important for your kids. Now, I want to make it clear. We make them do it because we do it. I make us give more than tithe. If somebody texts me or something comes up, we find a way to give more because we've been given more. But I don't make my kids do that. But what you find is that your kids just do that. They learn generosity. They really do. It wasn't even, I remember when we first adopted Christian, he was living, we're on the island. This kid has never had a birthday. He's never been given a birthday present. He didn't even know his birthday. And he moved in, and we're getting all these toys and stuff. And so I started giving him, like on the island, we have Eastern Caribbean dollars. I think that's what it is, ECD. These coins. And, will you help clean up, Christian? He was 7 years old. And we're like, yeah. So I'd give him a coin. So he suddenly has money. He's never had anything, and now he has coins. And we'd be out on the street, and he'd see someone in need, and he'd reach in and just drop his coins out. People were giving him toys. For the first time he's got these toys, he'd give them away to a poor kid. And that was just him. That wasn't me being like, you better. So the encouragement for you and for your kids is explain, oh guys, it's not that God's mad or that he's demanding of this of us. We want to be like him. I want to live that way. I want to pour myself out like God does. Because that's where life and happiness lies. And the thing is, you can't, just please, fight the desire to think of it like, the temptation to think of it like God's up there like, man, I really, there have been times I've forgotten to give, especially since there have been times we've had such a little amount of money. I'm thinking about bills, and God, Sunday comes and you're like, I just, zero, just forgot. I don't have my checkbook, and then we get home and I forget. And it's not like God's like, oh, all right, well, I know you're late on some bills, but you're also late on the bill, like the one that matters. Like these, they'll take your car, but I could send you to hell. Do you understand that? You're going to hell. Like that's not him at all. Because that's a terrible God to think of, who just doesn't understand that this idiot forgets things. And, by the time I remember, the money's gone because we're back at zero. It's not like I owe God. He's like, okay, well, I'm glad you gave this month, but could you have some back payments. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to saying to yourself and teaching your kids to say, whatever we've been given, small or big, we might live in an amazing house. We might live in a very small house. It doesn't matter. Whatever he's given us, we will find a way to give back because that is what is good for us. It is what it draws us into communion with him because then he's giving and you're receiving and then giving. And it's just this eternal exchange of love. That's basically what it ends up doing. So I encourage you, if you don't tithe, become part of the 20%. It's about 20% of a church carries 80% of the weight. When I was at St. Ben's, it was something like, I think around 2 or 3% of the entire congregation gave more than $100 a year. And the things they did with that small amount of generosity, they were so generous. Just think if everyone decided, no, I'm going to become part of that 20%. Suddenly that would be the 80%. You'd be the 100%. So I have family duties to do. There's a broken remote control car. Just please, in your life, I encourage you, try it for a month and then see how it goes. And encourage your kids to try. And don't be like, hey guys, we're starting to take a cut. We've been parenting for a long time. We have a 10% finder's fee. You get lost all the time. I find you. I need a fee. It's not that. It's just like, hey, we're going to start and explain like that, or have them watch this video. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. Encourage you guys, give if you can. Sorry, I said that wrong. You can. I encourage you this month to begin giving 10% and have a good life. We'll see you on the other side.